Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar by Transitions on Solutions Journalism. My name is Lucia Černá. I am head of Solutions Journalism program in Central and Eastern Europe. And I will be co-hosting this webinar today with our editor-in-chief and director of transitions, Jeremy Drucker. We will hope that this hour will be a productive time to spend with us, and hopefully you will get a bit more insight in what is solutions journalism. We are very happy to see so many people from actually not only Central and Eastern Europe, but across the world, which is very great news. So thanks for being with us. Briefly, over to Jeremy to say a few welcoming words.
Yes, hello everyone. Very excited to have so many people with us today. We do have a lot of new people here, so maybe just a few words about Transitions. We are a Prague-based NGO, a publishing and training organization. We publish an internet magazine, which we'll be talking about a bit later, that covers Central and Eastern Europe. And we also do a lot of journalism training across Central and Eastern Europe. So that's it for me for now. Just a quick welcome and very happy to have all of you here today.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. We have also Nicole and Katka, our dear colleagues from Transitions, who will be helping with the chat and technical issues. So because this is a webinar, the only way to interact with us is actually through chat and Q&As. So please use this. The ladies will help us to cover the questions in the chat, ideally in the Q&A, because it's easier to organize it. So please put your really direct questions to the Q&A session section. And there will be breaks during our presentation to get back to your questions. So please put them in on an ongoing basis, and there will be time to address them. And if you have any other issues, meanwhile, please use the chat. So what is actually our objective of today? We have three. The main point is we would like to define what is solutions journalism and what it isn't, because it's actually quite a good way how to define it. We will look at some examples using the 4 criteria. That is actually kind of the main methodology of it. And we will try to explain and address how to identify a solutions angle when looking for stories. This webinar will be less interactive. It will be more of a presentation. The follow-up sessions that are meant primarily for Central and Eastern European countries will be following the next week, and there will be more of a workshop session. We will also work actively with texts, but today we will be also addressing some text, and I will definitely share a follow-up session, follow-up email with you where we will share this presentation and also links to the stories we will be referring to. So starting with what is solutions journalism? So Jeremy, what would you actually, where would you start?
Well, we have it up here on the screen, and we're going to be dissecting this in detail later on. But we wanted to just tell you the definition of solutions journalism according to us, and also the Solutions Journalism Network, which is our US-based partner. And it is rigorous, evidence-based reporting on existing responses to social problems. And like I said, we'll get into this in detail, so you don't have to memorize it now, but we will be discussing it just in a moment. But if you can just have a couple key words there: rigorous, evidence, responses, and social problems. And we'll be breaking that down soon enough.
Yeah, so this is actually the definition, though there is no copyright to this. And you will see that solutions journalism is simply about looking for something that's working. Good. But to start with something a bit practical, I asked you today to take the Gapminder test. I hope that at least some of you managed to do this. It's a really good way how to kind of warm up. So to make it a bit interactive, I would like to ask you to go to this link, and let me share my other screen with you. Yes, to go to Menti and put the password or code in there. I think it's now in the chat as well. I hope you see my screen now.
Yes,
and
we
please
can see it.
add their number of your correct answers. And don't worry, this is anonymous. Nobody will be judging you, and we will get back to your results. And actually, we can see online now
And Lucy,
the results coming up.
for those
yes.
who are not able to take the test, how many possible correct answers are there?
13 questions.
13?
There are 13 questions
13.
in total,
Okay.
yes.
Wow, someone actually got 12.
Yes.
That's impressive.
That's very impressive indeed. So maybe meanwhile I can briefly wrap up what's the Gapminder test. It's actually questions about the state of world, addressing several social issues, and then you picked options about how it actually is. It's all backed in data. It's all based on official statistics and data. And as we can see, the results, well, are usually rather low than high, and it's actually not such a wonder, right? So you probably already explored the principle of this test, but it actually shows that the world is actually not that bad or not performing that bad as we usually believe, and that there is actually only one real problem that's not improving, and it's the climate change. But the other issues like access to education, access to water, or poverty, it's actually improving. It's far from perfect. It's far from like ideal world, but globally it's improving. But we still tend to be more skeptical, and journalists even more. Journalists are trained to be skeptical. So no wonder, actually Gapminder initiative, there is a big initiative behind this, was actually doing this test with several groups. One of them was actually chimpanzee, and they were just randomly picking the questions, and they performed better than journalists. However, what's the point of this? Imagine that if we have such a skeptical and critical point of view and of the world, what kind of picture do we actually transfer to our readers? And the thing is that when we, why is this, right? If we, okay, I will now share my screen in the full presentation mode so that you see it better. Yeah. So why is this? Because this is our daily dose of information. And basically it's our daily dose of negativity that we are receiving from mainstream media, or actually all media across, it's like take it online or offline. There is simply a lot of bad news. And I dare to say that actually we all are very tired of this. Yeah, my husband the other day said, like, I'm not watching news anymore. I'm not reading news service anymore. Why should I do this to myself? There is no single good news. There is only bad news, and this is really really impacting me. Why should I do this? And this is actually a general trend where people rather watch the next Netflix series rather consuming news. So this is actually raising emotions in us. So I would like you to go back to Menti, because you proved to be really great to using it. And please think about emotions or like feelings that are actually evoked by this, by reading such kind of coverage, by reading such news. So go back and let me just share the screen again. Yes. Can you enter in? So what are the feelings? Yeah, it's the same link and same code. Oh, it's coming. That's the magic. Wow, thank you. It's really, that's really rich, and I think it covers it perfectly, right? I wouldn't come up with so many fitting words. Thanks so much. So basically, this is what news is mainly getting us or bringing us, right? So I will turn now back to the presentation. I will share the cloud with the word cloud with you later on. And now back. So now, why is this? Or this phenomenon is not only our gut feeling. This is actually something that has been addressed also by data. So Jeremy, what the data shows?
So this is a study from the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism at the University of Oxford. And you can see here what happens. So people get frustrated, as many of you noted on the word cloud. You feel sad, you feel angry, and people start to avoid the news. And this is a survey that asks people why. And as you can see here, the number one answer, 49%, was it can have a negative effect on my mood. And I think this is very important, especially when we consider today how much discussion there is of disinformation, misinformation, fake news, and so on. So we know this is a huge problem as well, but you can see here that I can't rely on news to be true is actually number 2 in the survey. Number 1 is about having a negative effect on my mood. So this survey is a couple years old, but you can see they've done an update. We have some of the figures there on the right side. So between 2017 and 2019 worldwide, these figures increased by several percent. In the UK by quite a lot. In Japan, almost doubled. So this is a phenomenon I think we can all probably understand it. We probably know people, we probably have friends, we probably even know family members who might not even read the news or watch it because it makes them depressed. So I think we can all agree that this is a big problem, especially for us journalists. We want people to read and see what we're writing, what we're shooting, and if people aren't going to do that, it's a huge problem going forward as well.
Yeah. So why is this, you may ask? Why journalists are not bad people, right? Their goal is not to frustrate people, but why is this? What is the theory of journalism or theory of change? Well, basically, like if we take investigative journalism, it's spotlight the wrongdoing. This is how journalists are trained, that their job is to spotlight the wrongdoing, which is completely correct, and we really need this. This is this watchdog role. However, the theory then is that, okay, so journalists spotlight the wrongdoing, and then the self-correcting mechanisms in the society will fix the wrongdoing, right? And that's journalism working. That's the big stories and big cases where people are replaced and systems are changed or rules are changed. That's the big impact of investigative journalism. However, we also know that this is happening sometimes, but not really most of the times. And that's also what's frustrating for everyone involved, for the journalists and for the readers, because you keep reading about wrongdoing, but nothing really happens. I believe there are two basic reasons why the change is not happening. First, there is no goodwill for the change, for instance, political will. And then you need to keep pressuring. There is nothing else you can do. But there is also another reason why change is not happening. And that's because those in power or decision makers or those in charge simply don't know what to do about the problem. And here, you as a journalist can play a significant role and deliver a significant service for your community, because this is what you can do using your analytical skills and storytelling skills, investigating about what can be done about that problem that we are facing and what has been already done elsewhere, bringing this knowledge back, scrutinized and fact-checked, and opening a public debate about, well, so really, is there nothing you can do about it as you claim? Or is it just an excuse? And that's actually the role of solutions journalism. It's removing excuses, because beside the watchdog that we really need, we need to know we have a problem, right? But there is another role that journalism can do or have, and that's the guide dog. The guide dog is also, it's showing possible ways. It's not pulling you there or there. It's up to you to pick the way, but the guide dog is showing you possibilities. And that's exactly the role of solution journalism. I really want to stress we need both of those dogs. We need the watchdog as the guardian of democracy and watching the power, but we also need the guide dog, because often we are lacking this. Okay, so what's next? What can be done about it? It's actually showing the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the basic emotion or basic principle what solution journalism does. We are in a deep trouble, and investigative journalism is more about the tunnel, but we need to also see the light at the end of the tunnel, however far it is, but we need to see something can be done about those problems. Otherwise, it's really frustrating. So Jeremy, Tina Rosenberg, who is she and why is she so important to us?
So Tina Rosenberg is a columnist and longtime journalist at the New York Times, who was one of the co-founders of the Solutions Journalism Network, as I said, our US-based partner. And we really like this quote. She said this actually when she was helping us with a workshop in Prague a couple of years ago, and it's still accurate, still worth talking about and stressing. So I'm going to just read it out in case maybe some of you are on your phones or something like that and you don't have the slide in front of you. But you can't just cover problem after problem, lead people into despair and passivity, and wave goodbye. You owe the audience more than that. Solutions journalism is showing there are people responding to problems and there are things that are working. And before passing this over to Lucy, I just wanted to stress again what she said. We really need investigative journalists. We're not saying everyone should become a solutions journalist, but you need people to look beyond just the problems and start talking about the solutions. Many times the people who have the skills to do that are in fact investigative journalists who know how to dig deeply into problems. So we've given this talk before. Sometimes investigative journalists are kind of skeptical, thinking, well, that's not for me to do. But very often these are the type of reporters that end up knowing how to do solutions journalism very well and are some of the best solutions journalists around. So Lucy, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Actually, solutions journalism is using the same methods and the same bulldog attitude. You just bite and don't let it go until you actually find out how it is. So using the same approach and methods, but asking the opposite question. Instead of asking what's not wrong or what's not working, you're asking what is working. That's the only opposite. Good. So what is the difference? So I actually picked a very actual issue, and that's vaccination. As we all know, vaccination is a big issue now, and there are many troubles about it. It's delayed, and the strategies are not working well, or no, are not well prepared. The logistics is simply a challenge. And we get this information day by day since several weeks now. Um, and this is definitely a needed information. However, what can I do with the information that's repeating the same over and over again? There is another way how you can approach the very same problem, but with the solutions perspective in mind. And that's, you are looking for those who are doing better. You're not looking for those who are doing best, because probably no one nowadays is doing best. Everyone's struggling. But solutions-oriented approach is looking how others that have better performance or better results are doing it, what is different in what they are doing, and exactly the how they are doing it. Because it's kind of a recipe. So instead of only crying about that problem over and over again, you try to look for those who simply tried another way or simply managed to do it better. And what can be learned? What can we learn from them? That's the principle. It's not about, well, they are great and they are doing well, but what is the replicable model behind this? What can we actually, what they will teach us, how they did it in Denmark, while Ireland might be still struggling, or you name the European country, basically, including the Czech Republic. So we need to, usually you need to have the problem focused reporting first, to sensibilize your audience. Well, Houston, we have a problem, because without knowing we have a problem, people will be not interested in solutions, right? So we are right now in the middle of the crisis, so everyone knows we have a problem, but repetitive articles about how many people are dying and how hospitals are overwhelmed and how vaccination systems are simply not working properly is not moving us on. And actually, I don't know how you, but I'm really tired of this, and actually very frustrated, because it really, we are all tired of this. So this is again about the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, we can do better. So what is the difference, Jeremy?
So there are a lot of differences, but here, number one, I think you probably have gathered this from what you've been hearing from Lucy, but solutions journalism should leave the audiences inspired rather than depressed. So it's a whole bunch of different emotions, hope, some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. There are things we can do to help the situation get better. And it's not just these very depressing stories where we fear what's going to come next in the day. It also balances the media's image of the world. So again, as we've been saying, there's definitely a home and a great need for investigative journalism. It's definitely important to talk about problems, but you have to balance that out with stories about what's actually working. What is helping the world or a country or a school or a hospital, whatever it is, what's helping them improve the situation. This really gives the true vision of the world. So it's really the whole story. It's really giving a truthful, more complete perspective on the world. And ideally, it should also motivate people to get engaged, to try to do something, try to join civic activity or somehow get involved, because they see that if they do get involved, real change can happen. We like to call this the next evolutionary stage of journalism, because it's going beyond just talking about problems to this kind of more accurate, fair, inspiring mix. So back to you, Lucy.
Thank you. So now we are giving you the magic, right? This is the slide which captures it actually all. There are 4 basic qualities of solutions journalism. It's a very handy checklist that if you keep following and you keep it in mind when doing your stories, it helps you to keep the high quality and solutions orientation of your outcome. If you want to take a picture of that slide, do it at the very end, because there will be 4 of them. So number 1, Solution stories feature not just a person, but the response. The hero is what the person is doing, not the person itself. And it provides reasonable details about how it happened. So it's not only saying that something nice or good is happening, but also how is it happening, so that you get a full idea of how it actually works. So it's an in-depth analysis. It's not just like superficial good feeling or feel good story. Number two, and that actually brings us back to the investigative approach, it provides evidence of impact. Solution journalism is not about good intentions or stories about nice people doing nice things. You need to really ask yourself and then your sources, how do I know that what you are telling me is really working? How do I know that this program, strategy, approach is really having a real impact in world, that it's not just doing nice things, but without knowing whether it changed something? Because it's about the change. Did it change someone's lives? Did it change the system? Did it change the service? Do people get better help now? And so on. So evidence. Now you can have two types of evidence. You can have quantitative one, which is ideal, having some data set or statistics proving the impact. This is also where you can actually start from. You find interesting statistics about someone performing better or improving within the time. We call it positive deviance, because you see, well, they are doing something differently and they improved. So this is also where you can actually enter in and find a story. So quantitative, but not always you have the very proper data available, especially for social issues, which are like soft issues and sometimes not really easy to capture with numbers. The more you need to work with your qualitative evidence, with your sources, with expert opinions, with critical voices, the more you need to really work in the field and investigate and bring as many perspectives as possible to scrutinize it and do your job as a reporter very, very well. So this is really bringing the rigor into your reporting, not just the feelings. Number three, that's something what I already addressed. That's this teachable lessons. What can we learn from that? What is the replicable model behind this? Because if it's only a one-off story, if it's a nice story that someone is doing something, but I cannot really replicate it for my community, for my target audience, for my city, for my country, there is not much of value then. Why should I tell the story? Because if I find another one that I can have something to bring from, it's better service, right? So it's not only inspirational stories, but it should help people who are challenged or facing similar troubles at home, right? That's why you are looking around for better solutions. And last but not least, limitations. This is something that gets quite often forgotten when people try to do like solutions-oriented stories or positive stories. But we need to remember there is no perfect solution. There are always some gaps, caveats. There are limitations to the approach. There are limitations in the method itself. It doesn't maybe work with every target group. It may work with young people, but not with elderly, because it's maybe based on digital technology where elderly have challenges with. Or it works for men, not for women, or the other way around. Or it works for people in the city, but not in the countryside, or the other way around. And I can continue. So this is one of the internal limitations. And then there are, of course, external limitations. A universal limitation is money. So that's why I always say, okay, money is definitely a limitation, but I don't count it. I take it as a default. Give me more. What are the other obstacles that are blocking the solution from having a bigger impact? This is what you are asking for, what you are asking when interviewing. And then why this is important? Because if you name the limitations, first, your reporting is more credible, because you are not painting it pinky, and you are not a PR agent of that program. That's really important to remember. you are still a reporter and you are bearing witness about the reality, which also includes like weak parts and dark sides. And also, if you don't name the limitations, then they will not be addressed and they maybe wouldn't change, because if you address them, well, this is a good program, but it has these limitations, then you can raise a public debate about what can be done about it. And can we maybe change it so that it works better and helps more people? So limitations crucial. So for a moment, enough of talking. We will play a video. So I would like you to watch it now with me. Give me a second. I will just play it in a second. Yay. So now, do you see my screen? I hope so. And let's watch the video. It has maybe 3 minutes, and then we will continue. So just checking. Yeah, great. Wait, no. Oh, sorry.
This spring, the now fourth grader felt the same as most her age.
I was really sad when I couldn't meet my friends because COVID. I was super bored.
Her mom saw a post online about the COVID-19 project, emphasis on teen, a group of mostly high school students offering free tutoring and summer camp-like activities for elementary schoolers online.
She just actually said, "Okay, let's go into Zoom." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" I went into the class and we were making a craft. And I'm like, "Oh gosh, this is actually super fun."
Almost every day since, Madison picks out a new activity or study area.
Now I'm not really bored anymore because I do different activities all day.
She's learning from volunteer teen mentors who live all across the country.
So the next problem that we want to look at is
tutors like Leon Jimenez from Dallas.
I think it's so important for them to keep busy and have someone to look up to, especially since they're stuck at home.
She tutors 1st through 5th graders in science, math, and English.
And they just tell me what homework they need help with or what type of problems they're looking for. I see progress both in the work that they do and just like how they're feeling, which I think is the most important.
The COVID-19 project's founders, high school seniors Sarah Shapiro and Sky Loventhal, have recruited more than 250 teen mentors like Leong to work with the more than 800 students.
I definitely did not expect it to be this big. I don't think Sarah really did either.
They launched the project in May from their home in LA, reaching out to schools in lower socioeconomic areas across the U.S. where families may not be able to pay for tutoring or access camps or after-school programs.
But especially focusing in more of sort of like inner city schools. And then we also reached out to a lot of foster care programs and kids that are in homeless shelters because we wanted to make sure that they're getting accessibility to these programs as well.
As the word grew, so did their program offerings. With students now signing in from 11 different countries, they can learn in different languages. The girls say they measure the program's success through email feedback forms from parents, but they admit there's one big barrier as they try to reach students most in need.
What we need for students to be able to access is a device and Wi-Fi, and unfortunately that's the one thing that we can't really overcome because we don't have any funding for our project.
So for now, they plan to stick to providing programming, at least through the end of 2020. And as these two prepare to move on to college,
what we wanted to show was, hey, if we were able to achieve this as teenagers in our community, this is something that you can set up on the local level in your community as well.
The founders admit there have been some challenges starting out, so they created an executive board made entirely of teenagers to help with things like outreach, recruiting tutors, session topics, and a website. The teens say they consulted a few of their teachers when they were designing the project, but for the most part, it was entirely put together without any adult help. They say they have faced some skepticism for that very reason, but to keep a high standard of tutoring that compares to paid certified programs, they say they have a rigorous application, interview, and training process. They also do audits of the mentors' Zoom lessons, randomly popping in and reviewing their sessions. Back to you.
And back to us. Great. So that was just one example. This is actually from a US actually Texas local TV series that's called Pandemic Pass or Fail. And that's actually the response to COVID coverage, because they found that their community is lacking reasonable or like useful information about what can be done about it and what's being done about that challenge. So now there are like several stories like that online. So I hope you see my screen again. So are there any questions? This is the moment for raising them. So Nicole, did you collect anything to be addressed at the moment?
Nothing yet, but
okay.
If anyone wants to add to the chat now, they can.
Yes, please do so, or use the Q&A session. Please don't be shy, and take your opportunity to challenge us live. Okay, but if there is nothing yet, there will be other windows of opportunities for you. So please do ask, and we can continue. Good. So as I mentioned, we found out that it's quite useful to talk about what is not solutions journalism, because we realized that there are many people who believe they are doing solutions journalism because it's close to the title and it's positive and so on. But when we get back to this definition and to the rigorous approach that we addressed, it's actually not. Basically, people from the Solutions Journalism Network sometimes say we picked the wrong name, because it should be responses to social problems journalism, but it would be a very bad hashtag. So it's solutions journalism. So to make a bit more clear what is not solutions journalism and why, we have 4 examples for you to kind of clarify the difference. So over to you, Jeremy. Or maybe I start with those actually, right? Because we split them in a head. So I will start with this. The story on the left is story that we call hero worship. It's about like great people doing great things. In this case, it's a mommy that donates a lot of, like 700 gallons of breast milk, a lot of milk, helping like other moms and babies that have maybe troubles with breastfeeding. But the story is about her, about what she is doing, and how she is, like how great she is, how great person is she, and so on. It's all great. Those stories are working very well. They are having usually quite good resonance. What's the trouble with this is that maybe not everyone can do this, right? Not everyone can maybe, I don't know, drop your career at home in Prague and move to Africa to work with orphans, or I don't know. And then those stories I found sometimes even demotivating, because it's the others who can do better things, but not me. But when we talk back about the breast milk, there is another approach how you can report about it, and that's the other one. It's about the very same thing, but it's showing a human milk bank and how it's working, how it's organized, how it's actually making, or how it's helping the systemic change. You are looking at the system behind that, and maybe from this story you can take this replicable model that can be actually transferred somewhere else where you are facing a similar problem. So hero worship, you are actually focusing on what the person is doing and what systems they put in place that are helping, not just the personality itself. So the hero is the action, not the person. The other one is called silver bullet. It's the magical act or magical tool that will save it all. If you can see down there, the lead of the story says, sometimes a soccer ball is more than just a ball. It's a lifesaver. And you hear the language, right? Well, a ball is still a ball. And we probably know that it's not a lifesaver itself, but there is probably something behind this. And this is about undistractable ball, undeflatable ball, and how it's helping people in poor regions like in Salvador, and what it's actually behind this program. But you can exactly tone down the rhetoric and go back to the facts and show how it's actually working. So that's the second story. It's the second story. It's about exactly the same. Good. So another two, over to Jeremy.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so as we discussed earlier, solutions journalism is all around responses or solutions that are already working. There's already evidence there. So these are not theories of things that might happen if you do something. So many times think tanks publish reports or projections or things like that, which aim to offer theories for how a situation might get better. Very important work, but not solutions journalism. Solutions journalism is always about something that's already in progress, already working. It might be very early stage. There might be just preliminary evidence. It might not be something which has already been in practice for a couple years. And that's something you would say in the story. But there is already some kind of evidence that the solution is working. So you can see here two examples, a Brookings report using the media to promote adolescent well-being, which is more about theory if a certain initiative was adopted. And on the right side, you have here a very typical solution story. Iceland has largely kicked teen drinking. What can they teach other countries? So this is something which they've already adopted, some program which has a whole lot of different elements in place, which is already working. Yes, and then we have very key, I think, something we've talked about at the beginning of this webinar. We'll keep talking about it. It's not activism. Some people think that solutions journalism is a journalist advocating for a certain NGO or certain response and pushing for that. Definitely not activism. You do not want to use language which is any way indicative of advocacy. On the left side, you can see here, this is very much an advocacy activism type of story, but solutions journalism is instead reporting on responses to problems. So you get into the nitty gritty, the details of how the response is actually working. And that should, if done right, take away any accusations that what you're doing is activism, because you're not just pushing one side, but you have a very neutral attitude. This is what's working, and this is what's maybe not working so well with the solution. So you offer the whole story and not just a activist type of report where you're pushing almost like PR for one particular solution.
Yeah, I would only add to this that when people are writing about good things, if you are into an organization you learned about and you are reporting about them, it's kind of natural that you tend to maybe like help them, but it's not your role. You need to keep reminding yourself. And I think the important thing here is to make sure that you are not making conclusions for your readers. Present the facts, but let it up to them to decide whether they like it or not. Don't say, it's great, it's working, it's perfect, this is how we should do this. This is not your role. You did your job by presenting the facts, and the facts should speak for themselves. And this is the way, and then again, addressing the limitations and bringing evidence is your weapon against being accused of activism and PR. Good. So this is the moment. This is another moment for you for questions, and I noticed that there are already some. So
we have a
well
lot,
done.
actually. So
yeah, cool.
I wrote some of them down from the chat also. So one question we have in the Q&A is I would like to know what you consider the main differences between peace journalism and solution journalism when dealing with conflict crisis. So that might be, we have a lot, so maybe we could go for, we'll answer first and then go down.
Okay, yeah, I can take that really quickly. I'm not an expert on peace journalism, but I think from what I understand, and I looked it up really quickly to be sure, peace journalism is more about looking at the root causes of conflict and trying to figure out how you got to a conflict and what are the root causes and what can be done to address some of those root causes. So I think it is quite similar to solutions journalism in that you are looking for responses, in this case, to the root causes that might be able to improve the situation. I'm not, again, that familiar with peace journalism, but we're not just looking at the problem and what caused the conflict. If we were applying solutions journalism to conflict resolution, we would be looking in depth at a particular response to a conflict that ended up in peace, and how did that happen? What made it happen? Is it something that we can replicate somewhere else? So again, we're not just looking at the problem, like what caused a conflict, but in depth about what is a possible solution to conflicts like this that we can potentially apply elsewhere.
Great. And so the next question we have is, why aren't news outlets using this technique more? Do they think it would affect their public?
Oh yeah, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I would say, and we will touch it again, when we are talking about limitations to solutions, I believe solution journalism may be one of solutions for the media crisis, but it has also its limitations. In my view, the biggest limitation is that it's high quality journalism that requests skills, time, and that means money. And nowadays there is a big pressure for media to produce fast news and produce quickly. And journalists don't have enough time to really do the proper reporting. And I think this is the biggest challenge nowadays. Therefore, I believe doing solutions journalism is a strategic decision for a newsroom. You need to really your bosses on your side to enable you to do your job properly, to give you enough capacity and time to really investigate the solution properly, not to end up with this fluff news that's actually, very superficial.
I would just add very quickly that I also think, being an editor myself, that there is a tendency of kind of maybe the older generation of editors, the kind of crusty old reporters who themselves used to be investigative journalists, to think that this is advocacy. They hear about it and they think, I'm not going to have my journalists go out there and advocate for a specific cause. So I think there's some kind of misunderstanding there. And like I said, we've been able to convince people. Hopefully we're convincing you as well. But I think that's also one reason why you don't see it automatically adopted, is that barrier.
Yeah, I would only agree. I think it gets back to how journalists were trained, and especially those who are now in like power positions in newsrooms, who make decisions, were trained maybe 20 years ago, and then that was the trend, that was the paradigm. What is the role of journalism? So this is in a way a revolutionary thought, and I think younger journalists take it more as natural approach, and for some journalists this is actually unacceptable. This is beyond the line, and that's okay too. We are not pushing everyone to become a solutions journalist. We only offer it as another tool in your toolkit to make your reporting more complete. Yeah, Haug. Nicole?
You guys touched on this a little bit, but just maybe to elaborate, how do you draw the line between doing a solution story and doing a public relations story if the role of the journalist is to inform, not really push an agenda? So where is that line, if you want to elaborate on that more?
Yeah, I guess we can somewhat repeat what we've said, but I think a lot of it is about the language you use. So if you're using just very enthusiastic language, this is kind of the best solution New York has ever seen, or this hospital is known for having the best program to treat pregnant women, or whatever it would be, you're really doing almost like PR. Even if that's true, it I would say, takes you away from your mission as a journalist to provide a much more neutral, balanced view of the response. So it's too much cheerleading, and solutions journalism should never get into that kind of situation where anyone thinks it's PR. And I think Lucy stressed this when she talked about the 4 qualities, but 2 of your biggest weapons against those kind of accusations are evidence. So any kind of more positive slant you're putting on the story should be backed up by evidence, either quantitative or qualitative. And other than that, you want to always mention the limitations. We get a lot of pitches for solution stories. We publish a lot of solution stories. If they don't have the limitations in there, we're skeptical and we won't publish it, just because every response has some kind of limitation. It might not be a huge limitation, but there is something out there. So I think if you cover those 2 things, you're well on your way to doing a professional piece of solutions journalism and not PR.
And this is taking one from the chat earlier. Is solutions journalism applicable to all types of stories or beats?
Lucy, you want to take that one? I know you've thought a lot about this.
Yeah, well, I believe probably yes. Well, the point is, and the trick is that there are no solutions to big problems. There is no single solution to climate change or corruption or poverty or homelessness. You will never find a solution to this. So the trick is, and this is what we will be addressing in the advanced session, is to break down the big problem to smaller pieces. I always say it's like if you want to eat a bar of chocolate, right? You need to break it down to be able to chew it. And that's exactly with problems. If you break it down to smaller problems, you can find adequate solutions, responses. Let's call it responses because it's not thick, it's a process. So then you can actually find, I believe there is no problem someone would be not trying to fix. And if you are looking for those people and for those approaches, you will find, I believe, a solution to everything. And again, it's not about the perfect solution that solved the issue, but it's approaches that helped people to tackle it maybe in a better or more efficient way. It's not all, and also, and that's something that needs to be addressed as well, solution stories don't need to be necessarily success stories. There are usually success stories, but it can be also about lesson learned about from a solution that failed. But maybe there was a valuable lesson that we can still transfer, although the program, I don't know, has ended. So so I would say a very, very careful yes.
Yeah, I would just add, there's so many creative, innovative people in the world that chances are, if you look hard enough, you are going to find something interesting that someone is doing, which is having some kind of dent in the problem, making the situation even just a little bit better. And those are the stories which you're trying to amplify and tell other people about, to also inspire them and think about adopting those solutions in their home countries or home organization or whatever it might be. So there probably are some problems out there that if we looked hard enough, it would be probably difficult to always find some kind of response, but those are rare. There are many common problems in the world today, many people working on them. Chances are, if you look hard enough, and we will give you some ideas in the advanced sessions about where you might look, and also a little bit later toward the end of this webinar, but chances are you can find something that's working at least a little bit to answer a problem.
Yeah. If you would allow me, I would maybe move on with our presentation, because I think we have still some slides that might address the questions that are already in place. So just quickly moving on, this is a wrap up of why to do it, right? Why do solutions journalism? Jeremy, would you address
Okay, I'll try to go through this fairly quickly, but just a couple points. I think hopefully you've seen so far that solutions journalism can make your reporting more impactful. So if done right, it can inspire people, hopefully also increase civic activism, let people see there's a light at the end of the tunnel, let them see if they get involved in public life that they can do good and make progress. So I think most of us got into journalism because we wanted our reporting to have some kind of impact in the world. a lot of us are probably depressed when it doesn't. When Lucy touched on this before, very depressing when you write an article about corruption or I don't know, healthcare that's not working and just nothing happens afterwards. So with solutions journalism, we're kind of giving recipes on how the solution can get better. So it might inspire the public. It might also inspire people in government. I think we tend to think of people in government as, unfortunately, you know, we think often corrupt, not doing anything for the public good. Of course, that isn't true in all cases. And there are good people out there in government that are looking for ideas and just can't find them. So this is another way solutions journalism can have impact. Number two here is just good journalism. I think, again, Lucy touched on this before. This is high quality journalism. This is journalism done right. This is journalism not just looking superficially at problems and not getting into exactly why things work the way they do. So I think the best journalists go beneath the surface, and the best solutions journalists, it's the same thing. They're going deep within a solution and really figuring out how it works and then telling their audiences. So here, number three, I think many of you out there hopefully are thinking, this is great stuff, I want to do it, but how do I convince my editor? How do I convince my publisher to actually do this stuff when, yes, it might cost a little bit more money to do because I'll have to spend more time on a story. So we don't have time for this webinar to go into all the data that's available, but much of it points to solutions journalism increasing audiences and increasing engagement. So people do like to read these stories. They spend more time reading them, and they do start to trust the organizations that are practicing solutions journalism more, because it's very clear that those publications or TV stations or radio stations, whatever they might be, if they're promoting solutions journalism, they're looking beyond the kind of clickbait, tabloid type of articles, which really don't help anyone and often just cause trouble. So solutions journalism, if done right, should increase a feeling among your audiences that you're out there for their good. You want to help improve society and you want to make a better world. You're not just in it for the money. Now that we're talking about money, it can actually increase revenue. So often, as I said, these stories are viewed often, which could mean more advertising on the pages where they're displayed. But one thing I think which has been really key in the growth of solutions journalism in the US and more in Central Europe where we work is that you find donors that are interested in backing special series or special sections on solutions journalism, sponsorship. So again, it makes those companies look as if they really care about society because they're willing to sponsor series that look to improve healthcare, education, poverty, homelessness. So it is a key opportunity for all of you to find sponsorship for doing solutions journalism, which, as we said, can sometimes be a little more expensive. It doesn't always have to be, but this is a way to boost your revenue and get it done. So back to you, Lucy.
Thank you, Jeremy. So we are going to run over the time, but we hope that you can stay a bit longer with us, a few more minutes. I also noticed that there is a demand in chat for some examples. We did think of this. We will go very quickly through them, but we want to show you a few sources of great for your attention, and also some concrete examples from the Central and Eastern European region. So the gold mine of solution stories is definitely Solution Journalism Network's Solution Story Tracker, which is a curated database. So it means it's not automatic, but every story that has been submitted to the database has been read, has been assessed, and has been approved as solutions journalism according to the 4 criteria we were talking about. Go there, play with it. There are many ways how you can filter the stories. There is now more than 10,000 stories. It's a cool procrastination toy and a very key tool for your research when you want to find out what has been written already about the solution you have in mind, or how others did actually address this topic. Another one is, of course, our own magazine, because we really believe in solutions journalism, want to publish more solution stories, have already published several. So I really advise you to go there and check our solutions journalism section. Here are a few stories, and I will really run through it quickly, from Bosnia about a senior center that actually enables seniors to get active in and, like, let's say, aging is more beautiful with arts. A story of that center becoming like a crucial part of the community, and how they did it, and how others can actually how others can get inspired. Now I think you lost my screen, did you? Why is this happening? Okay, sorry for that. Anyway, here we go. I hope I'm back. Good. Another story is from Hungary. It's a story about response to COVID, how elderly and young people are connected through a program, and then the story provides details about how it's organized and how it's working. Another one is from Belarus about response to domestic violence, which is a very serious problem in this part of the world and in many parts of the world. This is about a program that's combining self-defense and self-confidence training for women to actually prevent domestic violence, and how it's working. This one is from the Czech Republic about Housing First program. You might have heard of it. It's actually a global initiative. And this is about how this approach, housing people in need first, and because first you need to have a place to live, and then you can solve the other social issues and their troubles, how it has been implemented in a regional city in the Czech Republic. So not in the capital, but one of the bigger cities in the Czech Republic, and how they managed, what they learn on the way, and so on. This is a Polish story about job opportunities for people with Down syndrome in cultural institutions, and how is this working, and how it's helping to provide a valuable place in society for people with Down syndrome. And last but not least, this is a recent story from Ukraine about a school in Mykolaiv in Ukraine, where they started a waste sorting program, but this program actually brought a systemic change to the whole community, to the whole city, where the city slowly started to separate the waste as well. And this school program actually launched, like a wave, and that's exactly what Jeremy was talking about. It's about activizing people. It's about showing things can be done and how they have been done elsewhere. So that's really, really quick. We have still one, like the very practical things to share with you. But if you want to walk away with a question for you, it's like, what's the one story you have done or you have read that could have benefited from a solutions angle, where you now see, well, actually, okay, this covered the problem, but I would be really curious about what can be done about it. What is the response to it? There must be a response. So this is something for you, how to start thinking about where to look for stories. Probably we don't have much time for this. I will share the slides with you, and this is only capturing how a story pitch we are expecting should look like. It's all about the 4 qualities again back. So we are asking about how it works, what's the evidence, what's the replicable model and lessons learned, and what are the limitations, basically. When we are expecting a story from you or a story pitch from you, this is what we are most interested in. Those questions are the crucial, showing how solutions ready the story is. Good. And then the practical stuff, because we are 7 minutes over. There will be an advanced session of this webinar, as I already promised. There will be one for Ukrainian journalists in English, but we will have our Ukrainian colleagues with us, helping you to maybe if you don't feel comfortable asking a question in English, you can ask it in Ukrainian. And also there will be breakout sessions where you can speak your language and discuss a story. I will distribute stories for you to read ahead the session. That would help us a lot with time management. The same applies for Poland. So Ukraine is on February 9th. Poland is on February 10th at 10 o'clock in the morning. The same in English, but with our Polish colleagues. There will be one for Slovak and Czech journalists that will be in Czech with myself. And there will be one for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that will be in Bosnian. That will be hosted by our dear colleague Anita from Media Center. So you are very welcome to join either the local language sessions, or especially journalists from Central and Eastern Europe. You can join the English-speaking sessions, whatever it fits you better, like the Tuesday or Wednesday one as well. Good. So that's actually it. Why we are doing this is that we are going to open a microgrant and mentoring program around February 10th. And we hope that if you go through a training and you know what we are expecting, you have much higher chance, to do a good application. So we want to support this program will be for people from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Czech Republic, Georgia, Moldova, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Ukraine. So if you are from those countries, please feel free to, apply and join the advanced session, or reach out to us with any questions and so on. I will be emailing you with all the details as well. Good. So that's probably it. We will be really happy if you stay in touch. So you can sign up to our newsletter. You can join the Solutions Journalism in Europe Facebook group. And also recently we set up a Facebook group for our training alumni. So stay in touch, and we can actually continue in a more like friendly circle, let's say. So that would be from me. Jeremy, did I forget something significant?
I would just...
I will maybe get back to the slide.
Okay, yeah, I would just add a couple things which I think you didn't mention. Is simply, we're quite interested in publishing solution stories on our own magazine, Transitions. So in case you're not from one of these countries and there's no grant program available for you, you could definitely pitch us an idea. I still think, obviously, as Lucy said, if you go to the advanced session, you're much more likely to put together a convincing pitch. But we are very interested in solution stories. Unfortunately, for those outside of Central and Eastern Europe, we do not cover those parts of the world. But I wanted to just put in the chat here the name of a website that we also run, which is called Press Start, which is a crowdfunding platform. And we are trying to help journalists from a lot of countries around the world to find funding for their stories. So if you are not from Central and Eastern Europe, but you have a great solution story, or any story, in fact, that it's tough finding money to finance, please look at this website. You can see the conditions there to apply. So I hope I've made clear, even if you're not from Central and Eastern Europe, there are other opportunities out there. And please do join our newsletter, as Lucy said. And if you have other questions about solutions journalism from wherever you are in the world, we'd be happy to give some advice and some tips, and also just point you to the resources of the Solutions Journalism Network in New York. They have a wealth of resources, a whole bunch of great newsletters as well, and also have programs in other parts of the world that we do not. So that's it from me. I hope you can stay for answers to any questions we still have. Otherwise, very happy to have you with us today, and hope to see some of you again at future events.
Also, I know that we didn't touch all the questions, so feel free to reach out to us, maybe individually. We are really happy to answer it for you. I hope that we at least covered most of it. If there is really anything burning, please reach out to us.
And I guess also a big thank you to Nicole, who is moderating the discussion here, and also to Katarzyna, who helped put this webinar together. So we're still here for another 20 minutes or so to answer questions. So if some of you want to stick around, we're happy to answer anything that hasn't been made clear or to elaborate on anything we already spoke about.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe over to Nicole. You have the best overview of what hasn't been addressed and is really repeating or burning.
Yeah, I have some new questions that were kind of unique and queued up already. So a lot of people were asking questions about to elaborate on how you verify if a solution is actually working. There were a couple people talking about, for example, if you're covering tech and some company is saying something about like an app being a solution, or the government or an organization saying that it's working. So if you could elaborate on how you verify that a solution is actually being effective. We can start with that one. I have a couple of other ones that are not, but it'll probably be easier to go one by one. So a couple people asked that, if you guys wanted to respond.
Okay, I guess I can start, and I know Lucy, you'll have something to add to this one because we've spoken about that before. Well, like any journalism story, you really want to verify whatever information is given to you. And I think what is often a good idea is to look at kind of the other side of the argument in a way and find out what the other side says, if they think it's working or not. I can give you just a really quick example of a story that I've been working on here in the Czech Republic about a law that was passed to make all public tenders much more transparent by publishing the information on the internet. So one activist organization told me about it, sounded very convincing, but of course I wanted to check it out. So I went to another activist organization, which is maybe even a competitor of theirs, looking also for the same amount of funding. If the solution was not working, this is a group that would be likely to tell me that it wasn't working. But in fact, that organization told me that it was working, that their competing organization was doing a good job. So it's all about looking and trying to find out who can best verify the information given to you, but in a kind of neutral way, an expert way. So we'll be talking about this more at the advanced workshops, but you might want to look at academics, think tanks, scholars. There's always an expert out there on whatever the topic is. So yeah, I would just leave it at that. Lucy, do you have something to add?
Only a very small thing, and that's about the apps. I think apps sometimes, or maybe most of the time, tend to be the silver bullet that we talked about, this imposter, because they seem to be like the magical solution to the big problem. So app might be a solution or a response, but you really need to see what impact it already has. And also that's the trouble with apps, because they are usually new, so they are in an early stage, and we don't have enough evidence whether they were really helping or not. And it's not enough that the developer tells you that this app is really great, right? You need to see, I don't know, whether it's helping hospitals with whatever, now organizing people for vaccination, or whether it's helping deaf people to whatever. You need to really see that it's really making difference in the people's lives. Yeah. So if it's, for instance, something that gets replicated already, that it's a program or a method or an app that was introduced somewhere. And actually, I have an example. It's an app against, like, for schools, for students to report bullying. And there is one example of an initiative of Czech students that develop an app where you can anonymously report bullying. And this became very effective. And in fact, it has been replicated in many countries. So you already see it's working and it's having an impact, and you can actually see the evidence and also the weak parts. So early stage and like magical apps are usually tricky, and you need to be careful. Nicole?
All right, great. Sorry. So a couple questions also came up about conflicts of interest with funding of solutions journalism stories. So a couple people asked about if accepting money for a solutions journalism story from like a private party still makes it journalism, and just how you should navigate conflicts of interest when it comes to sponsoring this kind of journalism?
Yeah, I just wrote a little bit in the chat about that because I think Isabel had asked that, but said she had to go. Like taking any money for journalism, you have to have certain safeguards in place that the sponsors aren't going to interfere. Usually these are financial institutions like banks or big companies that traditionally would sponsor topics on fields where they don't directly work. So there wouldn't be a conflict of interest in that way. It's always a possibility, though, so you would have to be very careful about the sponsors that you potentially approached. But I think for all of us working for small, medium-sized independent media organizations, sponsorship is a key to, I think, kind of any future financial plan. So it's been a practice in the US for a long time with underwriting certain types of content. This is spreading elsewhere. Lucy, I'll hand it over to you and let you tell about the Czech example. But I don't think we're saying it always works. I think with kind of any money you're taking, you have to be sure that the donors are doing it for altruistic reasons and not to interfere in your editorial operation. But generally it has worked. So Lucy, maybe you could just mention the Czech example.
Yeah, exactly. And I will start with stressing that the key is the transparency with the audience about that you have a donor, but there is a clear line that they are not intervening with your editorial work, that they are not intervening into decisions about what you are writing and how you are writing about it. We have a recent example from the Czech Republic, which is a program or project focusing on education in the Czech Republic. You know, the Czech Republic doesn't have the best education system. There are many, many gaps. And there was a program called Smart Czechia. In the first part, they actually identified and analyzed the problems of Czech education system, which was actually very hard reading, to be honest. It was a big, like a big acquisition of like how bad the system is. However, even in this bad system, there are many positive deviants. There are many very great teachers, principals, people who try, despite all the odds, to do really good for their students and improve the system. So the second part of this project, and now running, is about those positive deviants, because they deserve a word, they deserve space, and they deserve that their story is being told, because it can be useful for others. And this whole project is funded by a foundation connected to one of the biggest Czech banks, because their priority is education of this foundation. And they really made a memorandum, and it's public and it's published, where they say, well, we commit to those values. We see a value in solutions journalism. So we support this newsroom's activities, but they have no power over the content. And I am part of it, and I really see it. It's the journalists picking the topics, not the foundation. The foundation is supporting some of the programs that maybe be even like a subject, or maybe like the program might be mentioned in the reporting, but it's not the PR, it's not corporate social responsibility PR work, for instance, right? So if you manage to do this, like the deal, it can be working. And honestly, this is a practice that's been around in the US since some time, and I wouldn't believe that this would be possible in the Czech Republic soon. And actually it's here. It started last year, and so things are happening faster. And I think philanthropic sources are probably in the future very important for newsrooms.
Great. Another kind of interesting question that came up was what level of understanding in solutions journalism as a practice and kind of experience do you think is required for countries, especially developing countries? That was brought up a lot, for how to do this practice, or in places where independent journalism is struggling. So kind of what level of understanding is required for the journalists, and how could we kind of foster more of that?
Do you want to start with that, or do you want me to?
go ahead. I have always addings.
Okay. Well, I hope we've made clear in the past about hour and a half that this is not rocket science, as we say. You know, this is good practical journalism that has some specific rules to it. I think the 4 qualities you will hear a lot about in the advanced session. We believe, and the Solutions Journalism Network believes, that those 4 qualities are in every good solutions journalism story, but it's not incredibly complicated to do that. I hope we've made clear that this is a straightforward way of approaching a story. You're just taking a different angle. You're not looking at the problem, but you're really looking at the solution or the response, as we might say, and how it works. So you do need, though, generally to have a certain level of reporting skills to be able to do that. I think it would be very difficult for, say, high school students or very early career journalists to do a proper solutions journalism story. We've seen it, but it's a challenge, just because you have to really do your reporting. You have to ask a lot of questions, go to a lot of different organizations, and really figure out the ins and outs of how the response is working. That can be hard for a journalist without a lot of experience. But I think once they do a story or two like this, they get the idea really quickly. And I think for the countries you're talking about, the developing world, or countries where independent journalism is under threat, yes, it can be difficult for a lot of reasons to find those types of reporters who can really practice freely and independently. But we've worked in a lot of repressive places, and we also see it can be done there. So it is a challenge in places that are much more politically controlled. But again, we've seen good stories come out of those countries as well.
Yeah. And I would maybe only bring up a bit again Press Start, because it's basically a crowdfunding platform for journalists working in oppressive countries or with countries with not fully free press. So this is one of another opportunities how to raise funds for your reporting. About the skills, I fully agree. It's quality journalism, so you need a certain level, but it's not rocket science. So if you want to try and you don't feel that confident, don't start with something big. Think locally, think small. Think about small problems that are maybe, that suck in your own life, yeah, and you are curious about how it can be done differently. You don't need to necessarily start with like solutions to climate change or the world poverty, right? You can start with small problems in your community, or even asking your own community, what is the problem you are interested to learn about responses to? This is this engagement moment as well, where you can do it that's really great about solution journalism. You can apply it at all levels, at the very local newsroom level to the like nationwide level, yeah. So the problems, as I said, are usually the smaller you break it down, the better you get, because you get more tangible and you get more to the point. So don't be afraid to start with small things. Even a small solution is a valuable information for your audience.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the best pieces of advice we can give this afternoon is just look at a local school, a local hospital. Is there a school out there that's getting better results than other schools in your neighborhood? That might be a great story. Some of the best solutions journalism out there is being done on the very local level. So yeah, I would say just keep that in mind throughout. Nicole, do we have any more questions? I think if people are
we have 3 more.
Okay, yep.
Kind of different. So one is, what are the chances that this kind of journalism would bring opposition from people opposed to a certain approach, or in the process discredit an otherwise good story?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, that can happen on any story anywhere in the world, I would say. But again, if you follow the prescription that we talked about above and really providing evidence, it makes it harder to do that. I guess you can always make up stuff and hope it spreads to discredit a story. I mean, if you're writing a solutions journalism story about, say, an NGO that is doing something really good to, I don't know, help women, for example, or help the environment, or whatever it might be. Someone could launch a campaign to discredit your story, I guess, in that NGO. But if you have approached it in a professional way, in a non-PR way, providing evidence, talking about the limitations, getting really in depth into how the response works, it makes it more difficult to do that. I'm sure someone can always launch a campaign, pay to boost it on social media and spread it. But if you followed what we talked about above, it makes it more difficult to do that.
Yeah, I would only add there, stick to the facts and don't overclaim, because you are bearing witness about what is already happening in the world. You shouldn't take responsibility for what will happen. So don't promise. Don't say something you don't know yet. Stick to the facts and report what has already happened in that community. Jeremy, as a native speaker, nicely pointed out that there is a difference about what works and what's working, because what works gives the promise that it will work forever, maybe. And that's the big difference between maybe solution and response. We see a solution as a process. So it's a response to a problem. It's not perfect. It's a struggle, basically. It's helping, but we don't know how it ends up. So don't make conclusions about that this is a perfect solution. And I think I saw something in the chat like, what something we cannot say it's a perfect solution, but could be. But how do you know? So stick to what you know and what you checked, and check it with as many sources as possible.
Right, we have one that's a little more specific. It looks like if you're doing a story about inadequacies in government and can't find an official response from government officials, is mentioning the lack of response from the state enough in your story, or do you have to do more to try to get information that the government might be unwilling to offer?
Well, this sounds like more of a problem story, because I would say if it's a solution story, the government would be very willing to give information out there that the response was working, right? Because it makes them look good, and then you would have to verify that on the part of using other organizations or experts and so on. So I think with a solution story, that would be unlikely to happen. It's possible, even if they're doing well, that, I don't know, maybe the government doesn't have a good press officer or communication strategy. And then you would have to, yes, look for independent experts outside the government that could tell you that this policy is actually working as some people claim it to be.
Yeah. And maybe if I understand it the other way around, that your government is not acting, but then it would be a problem story that you actually address that our government is not acting and saying we cannot do anything. That's the typical problem story. What would you do as a solution journalist is to look for other places that applied different policy, that another city that addressed the similar problem differently, and it worked somehow, you know, and it had some impact. And then you bring this story from the other village back to your village, and you challenge your government, and you tell your readers or audience that, well, actually our government is telling us they cannot do anything about that, but the next door village did, and this is how they did it. And this is how you are challenging and where you can have a similar impact as the investigative journalism, because you are removing the excuses and the non-action. You are saying, well, your non-action is actually not justifiable. You know, like it's not legitimate, and there are things that can be done. This is where you can really push the public debate about it. So that's how solution journalism works. Not about pressuring or like stressing that the government is not acting per se, but confronting it with others doing better.
And it looks like the last question was about just kind of elaborating again on the initial approach. It says, it seems that many stories you've presented start from a case and not from a problem. What is your experience about the opposite way, to address the problem first and then offer a solutions case?
Yeah, well, it depends on how well known the problem is, I would say. If it's a new or like barely known problem, or if it's kind of a taboo, like taboo problem or stigmatized problem or toxic problem, you maybe need to explain it once more properly and, like really set the stage. And then you can bring story that is actually showing, and then this is how it can be addressed. I would really suggest this with like really like sensitive issues, like for instance, I don't know, for instance, abortion in Poland. Now there is a lot of myths around that, and like a lot of disinformation and a lot of feelings as well, and a lot of beliefs. So maybe it's good to put the facts about the problem straight first. Or another topic that was an example from the Czech Republic is suicides. Very, very sensitive topic. A lot of, again, taboo around that. So if you do a problem story first and then you continue and make a mini series and you add stories about how to respond to high level of suicide and what strategies can be actually put in place to minimize the risk of suicide, then you can start with the problem. Because if you don't, as I said, if your audience doesn't know about the problem or misunderstands the problem, then they will not be that interested in the solution. So maybe you need to sensibilize your audience first. Maybe it's enough that you put it in context because the problem is quite known. Or maybe it's such a well-known problem that you need to spend 1 or 2 sentences with that, and you can jump straight forward to, like to the solution. So it really depends. And a mini series is actually quite good approach if it's a complex or complicated issue.
Yeah, you said everything I was going to say. I think the only comment I would make, and we didn't get into this earlier when we were looking at imposter stories, but there are stories which, in a way, resemble solutions journalism a little bit. These are stories that will talk about the problem maybe for 3/4 of the story. And then at the very end, they'll quickly run through a bunch of responses out there that are working, kind of a laundry list of different responses. And again, this is not solutions journalism because it's not in-depth reporting on those issues. It's really more of a problem story. And then the journalist kind of throws in the end some stuff which seems to be working. So that might at first glance look a little bit like a solution story, but it's really not what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Solution story has the solution in its core. If you need to cry about the problem first, if you want to complain about how bad it is, make it in a separated story and don't steal the time of the solutions or space of the solution story. I also noticed in the chat that there was a question about the difference between constructive journalism and solutions journalism. So just very briefly to clarify what's the connection, I think it's 2 parallel kind of movements. The solutions journalism comes from the US, starting with Tina Rosenberg and David Bornstein there, and then founding Solutions Journalism Network, while constructive journalism is a movement from Northern Europe. It's from Denmark, from Constructive Institute. And I think they both come from the same premises, like that there is too much negativity in the news and it has impact on the readers. While constructive journalism is probably a bigger group and solution journalism is a subgroup of this. And why is this? Is that, as I hope we managed to explain, solutions journalism is really, really focusing on this rigorous reporting. Again, evidence, limitations, like really high quality reporting. While constructive journalism is solutions journalism and also other things that are more responding to the negativity, like positive news or feel-good news or feel-good stories. Their definition or their approach is broader. So we actually believe that at least in the Central and Eastern Europe, the more rigorous approach is more appropriate because journalists are afraid of being accused of activism. In some parts of the world or Europe, journalists can afford to be more activistic, like in Scandinavia, for instance, not in Central Europe. So that's why we actually picked the US methodology and decided to spread this approach because it's better defined, more narrowed down, and really sticking to the rigorosity of the reporting, like high quality reporting. And that's what we want to support. So I hope I captured it somehow. Any other questions? Nicole, you're muted.
That was it. It looked like most of them were answered.
Okay. So we hope that we covered at least the basics. Thanks for staying much longer than expected with us. That's really appreciated. And we hope that was a productive time for you. Please feel free to reach out to us. And if you are from Central European region, please join us next week at the sessions. I will share links to each of those webinars in the follow-up email. So watch that space.
Okay, yes, just a thank you for me as well. Thanks for staying with us until the very end. And again, like I said before, I hope some of you can join us in our future activities.
Yeah, okay. So
bye to everyone.
Bye everyone, and good luck with your solutions reporting. Take care.